welcome to another Rogue Thursday. Today's deck is United Wings, a fun single prizer that uses the Brute Bonnet and Pecharunt engine to score early knockouts with poison, then you follow up by one-shotting most things in the mid to late game using your birds. In this video, I'll go over the deck list, break down the core cards, and I'll show you guys some ranked matches that I had so you can see exactly how the deck works and how strong it really is. Now, and here's the list that I've been using, and the game plan is very simple as well. You use the Poison engine to take early knockouts while filling your discard, then let your Murkrow swoop in for one-shots in the mid to late game to finish it off. Now, and the deck does rely on a few key cards, the first being Brute Bonnet. With its Toxic Powder ability, we can poison both active Pokemon, setting up potential one-turn donks and early KOs. Just remember, it needs an Ancient Booster Energy Capsule attached to activate the ability. Now, the second big card is Pecharunt itself for the early game. Its Toxic Subjugation ability is the other half of the poison package, adding 5 extra damage counters during checkup for massive early pressure. To go with those two, we also run the Stadium Perilous Jungle. This Stadium increases poison damage and doubles as an essential counter to some of the stadiums in this very stadium-heavy meta that we're currently in. Now then, as for our mid to late game, the way that we finish is using Murkrow. He's our main attacker. It has 2 really good attacks that we can utilize, but the most important is United Wings. It scales with the number of Pokemon in our discard pile that also have that same attack, which is why we run so many of them and why it's so important for us to start discarding cards throughout the game. Now then, to go with him, our A spec is Brilliant Blender, easily the best A spec for the deck. It lets us toss 5 cards from our deck into the discard pile, powering up our Murkrows and thinning out our dead cards at the same time. Together, these do form the backbone of the deck as well. Now, and as for techs, I am running a single copy of both Roaring Moon EX and Sada's Vitality. Mainly, these are used for tougher matchups like Gardevoir and Mega decks. They give us the power to one-shot those threats, though they do take a bit of setup as well, so you are going to be telegraphing to your opponent what you're doing. Now then, before we get to the games, if you are enjoying this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more Meta Mondays, Rogue Thursdays, and my 1-month 1-deck series every Saturday. Alright, so for the people that don't know what a first turn Donk looks like for any of the poison decks out there, I want to start off by showing you guys actually what that looks like. So that's going to be the very first thing that I'm going to show you guys with this game, is just how the combo goes. If your opponent only has a single Pokemon in the active that has 80 or less HP, you are able to win the game on your very first turn going first. And this is exactly how you do it. So here, you're just trying to see a whole bunch of combo pieces. You need specifically Brute Bonnet with the Future Booster, the Stadium, and a Pecharunt. The regular Pecharunt, not the Pecharunt EX. With that combination, you're easily doing a total of 80 poison damage at the start of their turn, and that's how you get the Donk down. And that's generally what people mean when they say it's a Donk deck. Alright, so here's the second game, and this one's going to be actually more of a game. So it looks like the very first one where we could potentially set up for a Donk here. That's why we are going to be extremely aggressive right now, getting rid of our Fez. You generally want to get this Flamigo as like one of your very first cards that you search out, because it can search out other copies of itself when you play it from hand to the bench, and that is a key point with that card. It has to be played from hand. It's not at the start of the game, you know, if it's on the field already, then it gets to use its effect. No, you have to actually play it from your hand. So here we were trying our hardest to get everything done. You know, we saw a whole bunch of cards, but we were just missing that Future Booster and that Stadium. That's all we needed, was a Future Booster and a Stadium. We already had the Pecharunt and everything else set up, so we do have to pivot a little bit. We still have a very good board state set up here. So Murkrow has 2 really strong attacks, and in matchups like this where there's Mega Pokemon, you generally are going to be using the first attack a little bit more often than what you would think, but you also need a Mochi on it if you're going to be going that route. So Mochi does do a lot for this deck as well, and does make it a lot easier to one-shot things, and that's the reason why we run 2 copies of it. As for what's going on, our opponent has the go-to combo of Solrock plus Lunatone. It is a very dangerous combo for us because Solrock can one-shot our Murkrows, and that's pretty much our primary attacker. All of the other United Wings require 2 energy to be able to do that attack. Murkrow just requires a single, so that's the reason why we use him as the primary United Wings attacker. Here we are able to do a lot of damage and then get the knockout at the beginning of our opponent's turn because we had enough United Wings in the discard already. So that is a huge boon about this deck too, is it's pretty easy early on to get those poison knockouts, even using like just Murkrow and attacking, and using poison can stop your opponent from being able to activate cards like Fezandipiti that require a Pokemon to get knocked out on your side during your opponent's turn. Poison's during the checkup, so it gets around that. Here, our opponent is playing the non-EX Lucario, and one of the important things to note is their first attack isn't online right now. They are able to still swing, but they had to use 2 of the Premium Power Pros to be able to actually get the knockout, because the Murkrow is resistant to fighting, so it takes 30 less damage, meaning that their attack was doing 0 damage without those 2 Premium Power Pros. And it was offline because we didn't knock out a Pokemon during our last turn. We knocked it out at the beginning of their turn with poison. So here we are just getting multiple Murkrows set up since we already had another one on the bench. So this is the best start that we could hope for, and the fact that our opponent didn't find the Mega Lucario version of Lucario is a very big boon for us, because that means that we're able to take a couple early prizes, and we're just going to have to knock out 1 Mega Lucario later on, most likely. The only issue is that they are still having the Solrock and Lunatone combo, so we really need to get rid of this Solrock and hope that they don't find another way of getting a Solrock back onto the field and then swinging with that, because then it's just a 1 prize versus 1 prize, but theirs requires at least 2 hits, or at the mid to late game we can one-shot it, but still at that point it's the early game that's the real hard part for it. Here our hand is looking pretty bad, all things considered. We do have another Dark Energy, we do have a Murkrow, we also have the Roaring Moon, but with the way that the game is turning out right now, I don't really need the Roaring Moon. We have a higher chance of just using Pecharunt plus Murkrow to be able to get a knockout on a Mega Lucario, so if we find a way to discard it, we wouldn't be too sad about that. Here we just promote the Murkrow to the active. We finally find our A spec, so we can actually throw the rest of the United Wing bricks into the discard, powering up our Murkrow even further. We're going to get down this other Murkrow as well. Here you see we're doing 240 damage right there. And we actually don't even play the Murkrow from our hand, which that is a misplay. We definitely should have just played it from our hand, but there is a reason why we didn't. So the reason why we didn't is because we still have Brute Bonnet on the field, and we have a Nest Ball in hand. We also have Pecharunt EX in our deck, and a lot of times, if you're starting to get these early leads and snowballing real hard, most people are going to use their boss's orders to boss up your Brute Bonnet and try to trap it in the active until they can get their game plan fully set up. So we run the Pecharunt EX as a way of swapping and switching our active Pokemon while also poisoning ours at the same time, which is very helpful for the Mochi with the Murkrow combo. So that's the reason why we were leaving the spot open right there, is specifically for that situation, and that's what we're trying to play around as well. Here we top deck into another Brute Bonnet. Doesn't really matter. We're just going to take another knockout, knock out this Lunatone. They didn't have a way of getting back a Solrock. We already knocked out 2 Solrocks, so they needed a Night Stretcher to be able to get it back. Here we are finally down to only 2 prizes remaining. So now they have to figure out what they're going to throw up. And for the most part, I don't think that my opponent really has a way of winning this game other than using maybe a Mega Lucario, but we can easily two-shot that, and the only thing that we would be worried about is, say, they have Mega Lucario plus Fighting Energy and then a boss. They could then boss up the Squawk, get rid of that, take 2 prizes, but even then, that means that we get a free attack with the Murkrow, putting it down to a dangerous amount of HP left. And then they knock out the Murkrow, we throw down the other Murkrow, and we would be able to get the knockout on the following turn. So game is definitely sealed for us in this matchup. And it looks like our opponent is just AFK. Alright, so game number 3 is against the Alakazam deck. It's a new rogue deck from Mega Evolutions that's been getting really popular lately. I do think that it's a lot stronger than what I initially thought. Here we start off with a Pokégear, and I kind of make a little miss sequence. So I discard the Ultra Ball and the Wattrel and search out the Squawkabilly. The better play that I should have done is actually not discard the Ultra Ball, discard the Future Booster because we know that we were discarding our hand, and then actually searched out the Flamigo and then use the other Ultra Ball to discard the 2 Flamigo in my hand to then search out the Squawkabilly. We still get to the same end state, but we could have actually had a higher chance of getting to the combo pieces that we needed to get a early 1-turn knockout to be able to at least get rid of this Abra right away. We still are going to be able to, it's just we would have been a little bit better set up. So here we do knock out the Abra, we get our first prize, and the only issue that we have is we have 2 EXs on our board, but we needed the Squawkabilly, and I did make a mistake by benching this Pecharunt. I should have just held on to it and saved it for in case we need it later on, because this matchup, we're not really going to need the Poison Engine. We just rely on our Murkrows to be able to do all of the damage necessary because they are a Psychic-based attacker, which is ×2 weak to Dark, and that is pretty much just Murkrow. That's our main attacker. So here they are using a Bidoof, locking us out of items, which we're completely fine with. We do have a boss here, and I was really debating about using it, but I'm just going to knock out the Bidoof, stop their whole item lock, and now they're forced into a position of having to find a rare candy plus an energy to be able to get a knockout on our Murkrow this turn. So here they do play down the Kadabra, and one of the big things with this deck is it draws so many cards. That Alakazam deck is just crazy good at drawing cards. So here they do use a Hilda, they got that to Dunsparce and a energy, and then they do just use that right away. They throw up the Abra, they go rare candy into the Alakazam, which does draw them even more cards. They throw down another to Dunsparce and use a Night Stretcher to get a Abra back. That way then they can keep the cycle going, and they do knock out our Murkrow. So we are just going to promote another Murkrow here. We do have the Night Stretcher in hand, so we can actually get a Dark back, but we actually top deck a Dark Energy, so we can hold on to that Stretcher for another Dark later on, most likely next turn. And then here I am going to use the Nest Ball just to thin the deck a little bit more and grab one more Murkrow just in case, because we know that we're going to have to go through all of them. So here we actually get a Arven off of our prizes, which is really nice because as long as we didn't prize our Earthen Vessel, then we can actually just use Arven to search out the Earthen Vessel and be able to get the energy back and save this Night Stretcher as a way of getting another copy of Murkrow onto our bench when this one gets knocked out. So here our opponent is still just cycling through cards. They're trying to draw as many cards as they can through their deck because they're looking for their boss's orders. Because if they can go boss this turn plus boss next turn, then they just win the game because they'll be taking 4 prizes and we still need 3. So here they have the first boss. They get rid of our Pecharunt EX, and that's one of the reasons why I was saying it's pretty much a mistake that we benched it. We definitely shouldn't bench it in this matchup at all. And then here we do Night Stretcher back a Dark Energy. which we could have just used the Arven, try to see if we have the Earthen Vessel, and that's what we should have done, so that is another mistake as well. And this, as you can tell, is one of the first games that I played with the deck when I was still learning it. There's a lot of sequencing that goes to the deck, even though it looks super easy to play. There's actually quite a few lines to it, and it is a deck that punishes you pretty heavily if you don't go through the right lines. So here they're just setting up all of the Dunsparces. They have the Night Stretcher to get the Alakazam, and we know that they will be able to go into another Alakazam, and then they actually use another Night Stretcher. They do attach a energy, and then they have another Boss's Orders, which means that they can now KO the Squawkabilly. And at this point, the game is pretty much over. We know that they have another Alakazam. We know that they most likely have another Night Stretcher, or they have one of the supporters that can actually get the Psychic Energy back. We are still just going to play through the game and just let them actually get the knockout, even though we know that the writing's on the wall. So here they do play down the Alakazam. They keep drawing some cards. They use a Tulip so they can get the energy back. They do put that down. And then here they're just going to use their Dunsparces just to take more time because they can. So I just concede. Alright, so game 4 is a meta matchup. We're playing against Dragapult Dusknoir. I wanted to at least showcase one of the meta matchups, even though this is a Rogue Thursday video, just because I wanted to show you guys that the deck can actually win against some of the meta decks if you get the right type of hand and the right things go on. So here we are just going through our usual lines. Here we drew into Brilliant Blender so we can actually get rid of all of the bricks in our deck, making it a little bit better for us later on. We do have a Nest Ball still as well. The only thing that we're really missing here is specifically the Future Booster Energy. And now that I use that Pokégear, I was heavily debating if I should even get the Squawkabilly down, because that is a 2-prizer that they can focus down. I decide let's just get another Murkrow. We do have the Boss's Orders, which is going to be very nice later on. The only other worry that I have is that we don't have Pecharunt EX down, which is very scary because they can just counter catcher up next turn the Brute Bonnet. We will be taking a knockout here, and because we top deck that Nest Ball, that's actually huge for us because that means that we don't have to worry anymore, and from the prizes we get a Future Booster Energy, so now our hand is looking 1,000 times better. They also benched the Latias EX, which we can easily boss up and KO that for 2 prizes for free. We have enough of our United Wings in our discard to actually be able to one-shot the Latias. So that is something that we can do as well. Now in here they are just doing their usual Dracloak lines, and they threw up a Dreepy just because they knew that they could move it with the Latias, and then they play out the Dusclops here too, so they can pop that later on. They do have the counter catcher to put the Brute Bonnet up. Luckily, we have the Nest Ball for the Pecharunt EX. We know that that is in our deck. That is something that I always check for whenever I use any sort of search card, is to make sure that that's in there. Here, they also threw up that Latias, so we're actually able to get 2 prizes this turn for free. We do use the Nest Ball. We get down to the Pecharunt. We have another copy of the Stadium, which isn't necessary here. We are just going to be able to United Wings. Right there, I was taking my time, making sure that that's the right play, because the other thing that we could have done is use the boss, get rid of the Dracloak, and stop them from a line of like Dragapult plus Neo Upper to be able to knock out double Murkrow on this following turn, or if they had Counter Catcher, knock out Pecharunt plus a Murkrow. Here they have the Hilda, so they are going to be able to do the Dragapult plus Neo Upper. So the only thing that I'm afraid of now is, do they have the Counter Catcher to go along with it to take a total of 4 prizes this turn? Because here they use the Dusclops, they do get rid of the active Murkrow, so we're actually just going to throw the other Murkrow up into the active. The reason why we do this is we only want to give them one prize if all they're going to do is attack with Dragapult. And we do have the Night Stretcher in hand to be able to get a Murkrow back if need be. And then we have the Fez now, since we got that off of our prizes, that we can potentially draw into a energy or into another Murkrow. So the Night Stretcher can grab either the Dark or the Murkrow in this situation. Here, they didn't have the counter catcher, so they are just going to knock out the Murkrow. They're not going to be able to knock out anything else. And for some reason, they actually benched the Latias again. They used a Night Stretcher to get it back, and that actually allows us to win the game this turn. So we're going to start off by playing Fez and roll the dice, see if we get a Dark or a Murkrow. We get a Dark Energy, so we can actually use this Night Stretcher, get back the Murkrow, put that down, put down the Dark Energy, attach the Mochi, which we don't even need, use the Pecharunt, put the Murkrow into the active, use the boss, and now we get to take our final 2 prizes and knock out that Latias. So here are my final thoughts on United Wings. I think it's a very fun tier 3 deck in the current meta. If you go first and set up, then it can be devastating to play against, but it's not always that easy or that simple, so that's why I only say it's a tier 3 deck. With that being said though, I do highly recommend giving this deck a try. I think it's so much fun to play, and if you're not trying it, you're definitely missing out on a very fun deck. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more Meta Mondays, Rogue Thursdays, and my 1 month 1 deck series Saturdays.